Easy money. A cocky black belt bet against black single dad. Unaware he was a Navy SEAL officer. When flashy sports violence collides with a father's quiet survival instinct, the result is always brutal. In the parking garage of the Foundry, Brock Callahan mocked Darnell King as a washed-up old man in front of an excited crowd. Darnell stepped onto the mat because he needed $1.500 to save his tow truck, his daughter's only lifeline. But Brock had no idea Darnell was a former combat Navy SEAL commander. As Brock's chokehold locked tight, Darnell's survival instinct kicked in. He lifted the cocky black belt and slammed him onto the rough concrete under the thin foam mat. Brock immediately tapped out in pain. But before he could spend the money, Darnell faced an eviction notice and secret sabotage from Callahan's crew. Has the real battle just begun? Because that fight in the garage was only the first shot in a much longer war, the real story starts earlier. It starts on a quiet Tuesday morning in Charlotte, North Carolina. Darnell King had lived in this city for 6 years. He liked the slow mornings before the traffic and the noise arrived. He liked the fog that sat low over the parking lot outside his window. Darnell King woke up at 5:11 a.m. His alarm was an old wind-up clock, cracked on one corner. He sat on the edge of his bed and rubbed his knee. It always ached before sunrise. 9 years of active duty had left small souvenirs in his joints. Down the hall, his daughter Maya slept with her sneakers still on. She was 7 years old and loved wearing them to bed. Darnell pulled the sneakers off gently. He tucked the blanket under her chin. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and crayons. In the kitchen, he counted his cash. 6 crumpled bills, and some coins added up to $61.40. His tow truck, the only thing that paid his bills, sat outside with a blown transmission. The repair shop wanted $1,483. He had exactly 9 days before the shop sold his truck for parts. He had already called 2 banks that week, hoping for a small loan. Both turned him down within minutes, citing his thin credit file. Darnell hung up each time, without raising his voice, though his shoulders sank a little lower with every rejection. Darnell drove Maya to school in a borrowed sedan that smelled like pine air freshener and old coffee. The engine rattled every time he braked. He kept his face calm. Maya never needed to see him worried. Before the Navy, before Charlotte, Darnell had never planned on driving tow trucks for a living. But steady work mattered more than old dreams once Maya came along. He built his small company from a single used truck and a phone number printed on cheap business cards. 3 years of early mornings had earned him a decent name around town. A handful of loyal customers always called him first when their cars broke down. That afternoon, his phone buzzed with a text from an old Army buddy named Reggie. Reggie worked security at a downtown gym called the Foundry. The message was short. It said a fighter there was offering cash to anyone who could last 3 minutes with him. Darnell frowned at his screen. He had not stepped on a mat in years. Fighting for money felt cheap, almost embarrassing for a man who once led men into real danger. But the number in the text stopped his thumb. $1,500. That was the exact price of his engine, plus a little extra for groceries. His stomach tightened at the thought of losing the truck. Without it, he had no income, no way to feed Maya, no way to keep their small apartment. He called Reggie back within 4 minutes. "It's a promotion for the gym," Reggie said. "Owner's a hotshot named Brock Callahan. 3-time regional champion. He picks a regular guy from the crowd, offers cash, and beats them for the cameras. It's supposed to build hype for his new class." Darnell's jaw flexed. So it's rigged for him to win. Basically, yeah. Nobody's ever lasted the full 3 minutes. Darnell looked at the crack running across his phone screen. He thought about the shop calling in 9 days, about Maya asking where the truck went. He thought about her sneakers, still warm from her feet that morning. "Sign me up," he said quietly. Reggie was silent for a second. "You sure? This guy hits hard, man. He posts the videos online. People get hurt." "How many minutes has anyone lasted?" Darnell asked. "Longest was 41 seconds, Reggie said. Guy broke his wrist trying to block a kick." Darnell closed his eyes for a moment, weighing the risk against the shop's deadline ticking down in his head. "I've been hit harder," Darnell said. That was true, though Reggie didn't know exactly what he meant. Around his neck, tucked under his shirt, Darnell wore 2 dog tags on a frayed silver chain. They belonged to his old teammate, Marcus Diallo, a fellow SEAL who never made it home from a mission outside Ramadi. Darnell had worn them every day for 11 years. He touched them now, the metal warm from his skin. "Watch over me tonight, Mo," he whispered. He remembered Marcus's voice from years ago, low and steady during a training exercise in the desert heat. "Breathe first," Marcus used to say. "Panic kills faster than any bullet." Darnell had repeated that phrase through firefights, through hospital hallways, through every hard night since. It had never once failed him. He hoped it would not fail him tonight either, in a parking garage full of strangers and cameras instead of sand and gunfire. He almost didn't go. Standing outside his apartment, that evening, keys in hand, Darnell felt his chest go tight. It wasn't fear of Brock Callahan. It was something older. He hated putting on a show. He hated the idea of strangers filming him for entertainment, while his daughter slept 2 miles away, trusting him to keep their small world steady. He sat in the borrowed sedan for 6 full minutes without starting the engine. The vinyl seat felt cold under his palms. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice, then went quiet. He stared at the dark apartment window where Maya slept, and he thought about every reason to just walk back inside. Then his phone lit up. A text from the tow shop. 9 days had just become 8, thanks to a new storage fee. Darnell exhaled slowly and turned the key. The foundry sat on the edge of downtown, a converted warehouse with brick walls and a rooftop sign that buzzed blue at night. Darnell parked in the underground garage, where a crowd of maybe 80 people had already gathered around a thin foam mat laid over bare concrete. Phones glowed everywhere, lighting up faces in the dim garage like scattered candles. Someone had set up 2 speakers blasting music with a heavy bass line thumping against the concrete pillars. A folding table near the entrance held stacks of cash, counted out in neat piles for the night's betting pool. Brock Callahan stood in the center, soaking up the noise. He wore a black belt with gold stitching and a fitted shirt that showed off every muscle. His watch alone probably cost more than Darnell's truck repair. He clapped his hands together and grinned at the camera phones pointed his way. "Who's my next volunteer?" Brock called out, scanning the crowd like a man picking produce at a market. His eyes landed on Darnell, who stood near the back in a faded work jacket and scuffed boots. Brock's grin widened. "This guy? Look at him. Grandpa's here for the free workout." The crowd laughed. Someone near the front filmed on their phone, angling for a good shot. Darnell's face stayed still. His pulse did not rise. He had learned long ago that calm was a weapon nobody could take from him. The garage smelled like motor oil and cheap cologne, thick enough to catch in the back of the throat. Somewhere behind the crowd, a generator hummed, feeding light to a portable ring of stage lamps. The concrete floor was cold even through Darnell's boots. "Name's Darnell," he said, stepping onto the mat. Brock circled him once, sizing him up. His gold-stitched belt caught the stage light with every step. "You look tired, old man. This ain't a nap. You sure you want to do this in front of everybody?" A few people in the crowd chuckled. One man near the front raised his phone higher, hunting for a better angle on Darnell's worn work boots. "I need the money," Darnell said simply. Brock laughed loud enough to bounce off the concrete walls. "Easy money," he said to the crowd, tapping his own chest. "Watch this." He reached out and flicked the chain around Darnell's neck, pulling the dog tags into view. "What's this, some cheap necklace from a gas station?" Something in Darnell's eyes changed for half a second. His jaw tightened. He said nothing, but he tucked the tags carefully back under his shirt, his fingers steady despite the sting in his chest. A referee, one of Brock's own employees, raised a hand between them. 3 minutes. Submission, knockout, or tap wins it. "Ready?" Darnell nodded once. The garage went quiet except for the low hum of an air vent somewhere above them. Somebody's phone buzzed in a pocket. A A car alarm chirped once in the distance, then stopped. The crowd leaned in, breath held, waiting. Brock moved first, fast and flashy. A spinning kick meant for the cameras more than for damage. Darnell simply stepped back, letting the kick cut air an inch from his chest. The crowd gasped at the near miss. "Careful," Brock said, smirking. "Don't want you to trip and hurt yourself." Darnell said nothing. He watched Brock's shoulders, the small shift before every strike. Years of training never really left a man's body. It lived in the muscles, quiet until it was needed. Brock threw 2 quick jabs. Darnell blocked both with his forearms, the impact stinging but controlled. The crowd noise rose, phones tilting for a better angle. Sweat gathered along Brock's hairline, catching the fluorescent light above the mat. Brock tried a low leg kick next, aiming to buckle Darnell's knee. Darnell shifted his weight and absorbed most of the force, though his jaw tightened at the sting. The crowd murmured, sensing the fight was not going the way they expected. "You hit like a mall cop," someone shouted from the back, laughing. Brock's face flushed red at the joke. He wiped sweat from his brow and squared his stance again, his breathing growing sharper. "Stand still," Brock snapped, frustration creeping into his voice. He lunged forward and wrapped an arm around Darnell's neck from behind, locking in a chokehold meant to end the match in seconds. The crowd roared. Someone shouted for Darnell to tap. Darnell's vision narrowed at the edges. His lungs burned for air that would not come. For one heartbeat, old training and old danger blurred together, a memory of dust and gunfire pressing against the present moment. His body reacted before his mind caught up. He dropped his hips low, gripped Brock's forearm, and twisted with a force built from years of real combat, not showmanship. In one motion, he lifted Brock clean off his feet. He drove him down, through the thin foam mat, straight onto the rough concrete underneath. The sound cracked through the garage like a slammed door. Brock's arm released instantly. He tapped the mat 3 times, his face pale and his breath ragged. The referee dove in to pull them apart, though there was nothing left to separate. Silence swallowed the garage. Even the air vents seemed to hush. Then, all at once, the crowd erupted into noise, phones raised higher, voices climbing over each other in shock. Darnell stood slowly, breathing hard but steady. He offered Brock a hand, an old habit from another life. Brock waved it off, his cheeks flushed red, his pride bruised harder than his back. "Lucky shot," Brock muttered, refusing to meet Darnell's eyes. Deacon Mills, Brock's business partner, and the gym's manager, pushed through the crowd with a stack of cash. His smile looked tight, forced at the corners. He counted out $1,500 bills into Darnell's palm, without a word of respect. Darnell folded the money and slipped it into his jacket. He turned to leave, already thinking about the transmission shop and the smile Maya would wear tomorrow. His ribs ached with every step, but his mind stayed clear, calm, almost peaceful. For the first time in 8 days, he felt like he could breathe all the way down to his stomach. Walking to his car, he passed a small bakery with its lights still on. He stopped, counted out $3, and bought a single cinnamon roll for Maya's breakfast. It felt like the first real gift he had given her in weeks. But Brock's voice caught him at the edge of the mat. "This isn't over, old man." Darnell paused only a second. "It is for me," he said, and walked into the night. That should have been the end of it. A win, some cash, a fixed truck, and a quiet story to keep to himself. Darnell believed the hardest part of his week was already behind him. He was wrong. The next morning, Darnell woke to sunlight and the smell of burnt toast, since Maya had tried making breakfast on her own again. He laughed for the first time in days, scraping the black crust off 2 slices of bread. $1,500 sat folded in an envelope on the counter, untouched and waiting for the repair shop. Maya sat on the counter stool, swinging her legs, watching him count the money twice, just to be sure. "Are we okay now, Daddy?" she asked, her voice small but hopeful. "We're okay," Darnell said, kissing the top of her head. "Better than okay." Then someone knocked on the apartment door. A property management worker stood outside, holding a yellow envelope. Eviction notice, the man said flatly. Says here you're 41 days behind on rent. Darnell blinked. That's not right. I paid 3 weeks ago. The man shrugged and handed him the paper anyway. Take it up with the office. You've got 5 days to respond. Darnell shut the door and stared at the notice, his chest tight in a way that had nothing to do with last night's fight. He had proof of payment on his phone, a bank transfer dated weeks earlier. Something about this felt deliberately wrong, timed too close to the fight to be a coincidence. He called the property office. A tired voice on the line told him something strange. Their system showed no record of his payment at all. A complaint had also come in from a resident claiming unauthorized business activity at his address. Darnell had never run a business from his apartment in his life. His hand stayed calm, but his mind moved fast, cataloging details the way he'd been trained to. Someone had filed a fake complaint. Someone had erased a payment from a system that rarely made mistakes. The timing landed exactly one night after he'd embarrassed Brock Callahan in front of 80 strangers with cameras. He drove to the tow yard to check on his truck before dealing with anything else. Maya needed stability, and that truck was the center of it. When he arrived, the mechanic met him with a confused, apologetic look. Somebody got in here last night, the mechanic said. He wiped grease off his hands with a torn rag. Poured something in your fuel tank. Sugar, looks like. Whole engine shot now. Wasn't like this yesterday, I swear it. The gate to the yard hung open on one hinge. The padlock snapped clean in half. Darnell crouched by the fuel cap and caught the faint, sickly sweet smell still clinging to the metal. Darnell's stomach dropped, a slow, cold weight settling behind his ribs. Sabotage, not random vandalism, but a message aimed straight at him. He thought of Brock's last words on the mat. This isn't over, old man. Darnell had faced ambushes before, moments where danger came from angles nobody expected. This felt smaller in scale, but just as personal, an attack meant to cripple him quietly while he wasn't looking. He clenched his fists once, then released them slowly, breathing through his nose until the heat in his chest cooled. He would not panic. Panic never solved anything in the field, and it wouldn't solve anything here either. That evening, Reggie called him with a nervous edge in his voice. Man, you need to see this. Deacon's been running his mouth at the gym, bragging to some of Brock's guys about handling your eviction paperwork. Said something about the truck, too. Darnell's jaw tightened, muscle flexing hard beneath his skin. Bragging where? Locker room. Didn't know I was still in the back stall. You get any of it recorded? Reggie hesitated. No, but the foundry's got cameras everywhere. Brock installed them himself last year. Said he wanted proof for insurance if anybody got hurt on his mats. Something shifted in Darnell's chest, a small spark of clarity. The very system Brock built to protect his own ego might now hold the truth neither he nor Deacon expected anyone to find. Darnell barely slept that night. He lay awake listening to Maya's breathing through the thin apartment wall, counting every soft inhale like a soldier counting seconds before mission. By morning, he had a plan, quiet and precise, the kind he used to build before dawn raids. He drove first to the property management office, with his bank statement printed and highlighted. The manager, a woman named Carol Ash, looked over the documents with a furrowed brow. This to show a payment, she admitted. I don't understand how our system missed it. Someone deleted it, Darnell said evenly. Same night my truck was sabotaged by a man I beat in a fight. Carol's eyes widened slightly. That's a serious accusation. I have proof somewhere. Give me 2 days. Carol studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'll pause the eviction process for now. Bring me something solid. How long do I have? Darnell asked. 2 days, maybe 3 if I stretch it, Carol said. After that, it's out of my hands. Darnell thanked her and left, already running through his next steps the way he once planned missions, step by step, no wasted motion. Darnell's next stop was the foundry, arriving 20 minutes before opening. Reggie met him at the loading entrance, badge already in hand, glancing over his shoulder like a man breaking rules he half believed in. Brock doesn't know I'm doing this, Reggie whispered. If he finds out, I lose my job. You won't lose anything, Darnell said. Just show me the footage. Inside a cramped security office lit by 3 glowing monitors, the air smelled like stale coffee and old carpet. Reggie's chair squeaked as he leaned forward, scrolling through folders of time-stamped footage. He pulled up recordings from 2 nights earlier. The parking garage camera, angled toward the loading dock, had caught grainy footage of 2 men near Darnell's tow truck at 2:14 a.m. One of them was unmistakably Deacon Mills, his gym polo visible even in the dim light. The second man poured something from a plastic jug into the truck's open fuel cap, while Deacon stood watch, phone raised, clearly filming for laughs. Darnell's pulse stayed level, but something hard settled behind his eyes. There it was. Proof, recorded by the very system built to protect Brock's reputation, now aimed squarely at exposing him instead. There's more, Reggie said, scrolling further. Locker room audio caught on the mic they use for training videos. The recording crackled to life. Deacon's voice sounded smug and careless. He bragged about calling the property office, pretending to be a worried neighbor. He claimed Darnell ran an unlicensed repair shop out of his apartment. Brock's laughter echoed behind him, clear and damning. Let the old man crawl for once, Brock's voice said on the recording. Nobody embarrasses me on my own mat. Darnell copied both files onto a small drive Reggie handed him. His hands finally trembled, not from fear, but from relief. He brought the files straight to Carol Ash, who watched them, with her mouth slightly open. This is enough for a police report, she said, and it clears your eviction completely. Within 2 days, word had spread through Charlotte's tight-knit gym community. The original fight clip, already popular, exploded further once people learned about the eviction scheme layered underneath it. Comments filled with anger toward Brock and sympathy for Darnell, strangers tagging local news stations and asking questions nobody at the gym wanted to answer. A local news reporter, tipped off by someone at the property office, showed up at the foundry asking questions Brock could not smoothly answer. Cameras that once celebrated his highlight reels now caught him stammering, through an apology nobody believed. Darnell saw Brock only once more, outside the gym's front doors, 2 reporters still packing up their cameras nearby. Brock's shoulders had lost their usual swagger. His hands stayed jammed in his pockets. I didn't tell Deacon to do all that, Brock muttered, not quite meeting Darnell's eyes. But you laughed about it, Darnell said quietly. That's on tape too. Brock had no answer for that. He turned and walked back inside, without another word. Maya saw her father's truck on the evening news, grainy footage of him shaking Carol Ash's hand outside the property office. She pointed at the screen, bouncing on the couch cushions. That's you, Daddy. You're famous. Darnell laughed softly and pulled her into his side. Not famous, he said. Just lucky to have good friends. Deacon Mills was arrested on charges of vandalism and harassment, his bragging voice replayed on local television for anyone who hadn't already seen it online. Brock avoided criminal charges, but lost nearly every serious partnership tied to his gym within a single week. Sponsors pulled their names quickly, unwilling to be associated with a man caught laughing about crushing a struggling father. But the story did not end, with 2 men losing everything. 3 days after the footage went public, an older man walked into the tow yard. He wore a faded Navy veteran cap, and he moved, with slow, careful steps toward Darnell's ruined truck. He introduced himself as Walter Higgins, a retired chief petty officer. He had watched the viral clip of the fight online. Out of pure curiosity, he slowed it down, frame by frame. That takedown, Walter said, studying Darnell's face carefully. That's not gym training. That's real. And those tags around your neck, I saw them slip loose in one clip. Diallo. I served with a Diallo once, out of the same command. Darnell went still, his chest tightening in a different way now, something closer to grief than danger. Marcus Diallo, my swim buddy. We lost him outside Ramadi. Walter's eyes softened. Lieutenant Commander King. he said quietly, almost to himself. I looked up your record after I saw that hold. Silver Star. 2 combat deployments. You really were a SEAL commander, weren't you? Darnell shook Walter's hand slowly, feeling the rough calluses of a man who had spent decades working with his hands. For a moment, neither of them said anything else. Some things did not need extra words between men who understood the same kind of silence. Word of that conversation spread fast among Charlotte's small but tight veteran network. Walter made calls that evening, sitting at his kitchen table with an old phone book and a fresh cup of coffee. By the next morning, 3 other veterans had already reached out to Darnell, offering tools, labor, or simply a handshake and a thank you. Within a week, a local nonprofit for veteran-owned small businesses reached out. They offered to cover the full cost of Darnell's engine repair. They called it a small thank you for years of service most people never fully understood. On the day the truck came back running, 6 people showed up at the tow yard just to watch it start. Reggie brought coffee for everyone. Walter brought a folding chair and stayed the whole afternoon, telling old stories about ships and storms. Carol Ash stopped by on her lunch break, smiling as she watched Maya climb into the passenger seat. Maya sat in the newly repaired truck on a bright Saturday morning. She swung her sneakers against the seat, humming a small tune. She had no idea how close they had come to losing everything. Darnell adjusted the mirror, glancing at her reflection instead of the road. "Daddy, are we rich now?" she asked, eyeing the small stack of thank you cards for veterans he had never met. Darnell smiled, the kind of smile that reached all the way to his tired eyes. "We're steady," he said. "That's better than rich." He touched the dog tags of his chest, warm now instead of cold, resting exactly where they had rested for 11 years. Somewhere out there, Brock Callahan was learning a hard lesson about mocking things he didn't understand. Somewhere else, a quiet man kept driving forward 1 steady mile at a time. He carried his daughter and the memory of a friend who never got the chance to grow old. The garage crowd had seen a fight that night. What they never saw was the discipline standing quietly behind it. Years of silence and sacrifice, waiting patiently for the moment it was finally needed again. Darnell never went looking for that kind of attention. He never wanted his old life and his new one to cross paths at all. But sometimes the quietest men carry the heaviest storms inside them, ready the moment someone foolish enough decides to test the calm. That night, he tucked Maya into bed and turned off the hallway light. He sat for while in the dark kitchen, listening to the truck engine cool outside the window. It sounded steady and quiet, exactly the way he liked things now.